Now we will discuss local and global discourse structures. Local structure. Local structure is the structure which enables us to develop the understanding of the relationship between individual sentences in the discourse. It is also considered as the microstructure. The global structure is basically the understanding of the knowledge of our discourse with the knowledge of the world around us. And that is why it is considered as the macro structure. So global structure, it is our knowledge of the structure which corresponds to birthdays that enables us to comprehend and remember the shorter passage about the birthday. So you have the discourse information and knowledge in relation to the world around you. The ways we comprehend and remember units of language larger than the sentence, that is connected discourse. Now, connected discourse does not merely rely on looking at the meaning of the sentences, but it pays more attention and emphasis on the arrangement of those sentences to form or to see the connectedness. Connected discourse is coherent if its sentences can be related to one another. And we are looking at a larger text, so it is very important that the sentences should form connectivity and relevancy with regard to conveying a specific meaning. These relationships exist on both micro level as well as the macro level, local level as well as the global level. Now we will look at certain examples and see how they can fit into local and global structure. Now looking at the first example, Carlos arranged to take golf lessons from the local professional. His dog, a Cocker Spaniel, was expecting pups again. Andrea had the car washed for the big wedding. She expected Carlos to help her move into her new apartment. Now, if you read these, and in contrast to these, if you read these, which says, John bought a cake at the bake shop. The cake was chocolate with white frosting and it read, Happy birthday, John, in red letters. John was particularly pleased with the lettering. He brought it over to Greg's house and together they worked on the rest of the details. Now, what makes some passages easy to understand and others virtually incomprehensible? Part of the reason that the second story is easy to comprehend is that the sentences in John's stories are connected in conventional ways. Now, it is customary, for example, to use the indefinite article when the readers have not yet been introduced to the object or person or event, and the definite article when these have already been mentioned. Definite article the. Notice then that a cake in the first sentence is replaced by the cake in the second sentence. Similarly, the pronoun, it is incomprehensible without a preceding context. In John's story, we are able to determine that it refers to the cake in the second and fourth sentences. Now, in the story about Carlos, events are mentioned as if we knew about them already, but we do not really know that the spaniel had pups, who is getting married, or that Andrea is moving. The only basis of coherence in the story, the repeated references to Carlos and Andrea, is quite insufficient for the purpose of comprehension. For example, sometimes we also leave out some of the connections between sentences if we think readers are able to infer them. For example, John bought a cake at the bake shop. The birthday card was signed by all of the employees. The party went on until after midnight. Here it is assumed that the cake, the card, and the party all correspond to the same event, a birthday party. Now, how do we make this judgment so easily? We know a good deal about birthdays and what typically happens at birthday parties, and this knowledge allows us to fill in some of the gaps in the story. Yet, note that the is used to introduce both the card and the party, thus signaling that we should know which card and which party. Now, this serves as the cue to use some of that information in memory. What party or what party? So, this basically serves as a kind of indication or a pointer for us to use some of that information to draw these inferences which ties together the loose strings of the passage so that its overall meaning is unified and coherent. Now, superficially, the last passage is incomplete, but the overall result in reader's mind may be quite complete. Now, the story about Carlos differs from the first John story in its social structure, that is called the microstructure. Texts also have global structure, and it is our knowledge of the structure corresponding to birthdays which help us to comprehend and remember these shorter pages. So basically, this macro structure understanding, this passage brings to the macro structure, and this micro level, where you are just looking at the relationship of the sentences. To conclude, a discourse is coherent if its elements are easily related to one another. At the local or microstructure level, coherence is achieved primarily through the appropriate use of cohesive devices or cohesive ties. New sentences are easier to integrate when they have a clear relation to prior material while presenting new information, and macrostructure encompasses our knowledge of the discourse and the knowledge of the world.